In the 55th year before Christ, Marcus Licinius Crassus was appointed Roman governor in the province of Syria, the modern Middle East famous for having appropriated the laurels of the victor of Spartacus. At that time, the interests of Rome, whose expansion reached the banks of the Euphrates, clashed with the interests of the Parthian kingdom, located in what is now Iraq. Crassus arrived in Syria. Although the Senate did not give him the authority to start full-scale hostilities, the consul decided to undertake a grandiose campaign to the east on his own, secretly dreaming of repeating the exploits of Alexander the Great. Marcus Crassus quite successfully defeated in several skirmishes Parthian tribes, but instead of taking by storm poorly guarded cities Babylon and Seleucia, he went to winter quarters. In March of the following year, the consul, whose troops numbered about 42,000 men, announced the beginning of the great campaign. Legates offered Crassus to move to Parthia either through the mountain passes of the Taurus, in this case, a longer way compensated for less hot weather and the presence of water sources, or on the caravan route leading from the Middle Ages to Asia Minor through Syria. Crassus decided to take the shortest route to the coveted victory he had no doubt of. He crossed the Euphrates at the village of Zeugma, the present Turkish city of Birsik, and began his march eastward across the lifeless deserts. The Roman army, whose average daily need for drinking water exceeded 100,000 liters, from the first kilometers of march began to suffer from thirst. Crassus went farther and farther into the waterless steppes and deserts, driven by vanity and unreliable Arab guides. There is every reason to believe that they were Parthian spies. The Romans suffered from the heat and from the heaviness of the load. Each legionary carried, in addition to personal belongings, equipment, food, water and weapons, tools and building materials for the camp. At noon on May 9th, Roman intelligence discovered the enemy's forward posts not far from the town of Carrhae. First, on the advice of the legate Gaius Cassius Longina, proconsul ordered to stretch his forces to avoid bypasses from the rear. Then he ordered the stretched army lined up in the battle order 6 legions formed a carriage. In the center was placed the transport, in the head of the column cavalry. Moving in this way, the Romans came to the river Balis. Legates advised Crassus to strengthen at the source of water, set up camp here, and then choose the most suitable place for the battle. However, the consul rejected all reasonable suggestions and ordered to move forward. He could not wait to defeat the enemy. Meanwhile, the Parthians, acting in small units, began to gather together for a decisive attack. The Parthian commander Surina had about 10,000 men, including 9,000 light horsemen and mounted archers, as well as 1,000 cataphracts, selected heavy cavalrymen armored. In order not to attract attention and mislead the enemy, the Parthians hid their armor under cloaks. Surina put up front-mounted archers and light horsemen, which a quick onslaught had to break the Roman formation, and then the heavy cavalry was to deliver the main crushing blow. Parthian cavalry lined up opposite the Roman quadrangle. There was a deafening roar of trumpets, the rattle of drums, heard warlike chants. Immediately the heavy Parthian horsemen threw off their cloaks. Polished armor shone brightly in the sun. With howls and wild shouts, mounted Parthian archers and light horsemen rushed forward. This blow was repulsed by the Roman flank cavalry and the first ranks of the legions. The archers showered the Roman ranks with a cloud of arrows and rushed back. Surina threw the cataphracts into the attack. The armored riders and horses struck the front legions with a terrible ringing sound, but they withstood the blow due to their deep formation. After a hot slaughter, the cataphracts retreated. Once again, mounted archers rushed in, replenishing their arrows. The Parthians fired their bows at close range, piercing the Roman armor. This time, the Parthian archers did not retreat, as hundreds of camels laden with bales of arrows were in their rear. While Crassus organized a response to the enemy, the Arab contingents that were part of the Roman army hastily deserted. To counter the Scythian tactics of the enemy Roman commander could not practically nothing. The number of own archers of his army did not exceed 1,500 people. Roman cavalry could not catch up with the Parthian cavalry. All its attempts to attack suffocated under a deluge of arrows. Crassus, seeing that the number of wounded and killed legionaries will increase every minute, threw against the annoying and unyielding mounted gunners selected Gaulish horsemen and foot soldiers. Publius Crassus easily overturned the Parthians and began to pursue them. The Roman detachment disappeared over the horizon. Suddenly at the hills he was attacked from all sides by Surina and his heavy cavalry. The remnants of the Gallic cavalry and Roman infantry with the wounded Publius barely made it to one of the hills. The Parthians surrounded it and after a bloody assault took it by storm. Publius was killed. From his squad survived only 500 people who were captured. The consul tried to reach Publius with all forces at once, but the Parthians did not allow the legions to advance far. Marcus Crassus ordered to break camp, not even knowing what to do next. Parthian army encircled the Romans from all sides. Surina through messengers delivered to Crassus the severed head of his son, gave the consul a night to mourn the dead and ponder, offering to surrender. During the night, the military council of Roman high officers made a harsh, inhumane, but the only true under the circumstances decision, to leave the wounded and the wagon, retreating under cover of darkness in the direction of Car. The night of May 10th began the retreat of the Roman army. Parthians missed the retreat of the Romans, so with fierceness broke into their camp, brutally killed the wounded and sick, looted the cart and rushed in pursuit. With great difficulty the legions reached Car. Through the fault of Marcus Crassus in the fortress did not leave stocks of food, weapons and equipment, was not ready for a long siege. The local population was hostile to the Romans. Consul finally lost courage, sober judgment, and the previous few military gifts. He decided to continue the retreat, taking as guides another Arabs that spied in favor of Surina. On the fourth day after the battle, the Arabs led the Roman army into a swamp and disappeared. Almost immediately it became clear that all exits from the mire blocked Parthian army. At the insistence of his commanders Crassus went to negotiate. Parthians killed the loser consul, cut off his head and hands, sending these trophies as a gift to their king. According to legend, the Parthian king ordered to pour molten gold into the mouth of Crassus' severed head, so that the Roman governor could satiate his irrepressible thirst for yellow metal. Surrounded in the marshes, the remnants of the 6 Roman legions tried in separate groups to break through. Only a few succeeded, some of the legionaries were killed, some were captured. Miraculously surviving Romans were caught and exterminated by local tribes. The greatest campaign of Crassus for the eastern bank of the Euphrates, initially being a dangerous adventure, turned solely through the fault of the consul in tragedy. Only 6,000 Romans managed to avoid death and shameful captivity. The heavy defeat of Marcus Licinius Crassus at Carrhae caused serious damage to the military and political prestige and authority of the Roman Republic. Roman expansion in the Middle East was stopped for several decades, and no longer went beyond the eastern banks of the Euphrates. Parthians did not use the fruits of their brilliant victory, getting bogged down in another internecine struggle. The king ordered Surina to be put to death, because the popularity of this commander among the people had become too great.